Hi everyone, Sarah here from my other channel, Sarah Humphrey Creates, my space to have a little play with some new ideas and some things that interest me that aren't necessarily embroidery related for the embroidery channel. And I've got something I think is quite interesting to talk about today. I've got a few things that I'm going to show you because I bought this beautiful textile from Japan with an idea that I was going to actually take it apart. It's sewn in lots of different pieces and take it apart and use it for maybe a future class that I could teach, but now I've got it, I'm not so sure I want to do that with it. So I thought if I made a little video about it, I've got a record of this piece, and I can also talk through it a little bit and maybe convince myself one way or the other what I want to do, and maybe you could help me make that decision too. So this is a piece of Boro textile. So this comes from Japan, and you may have heard the term Boro. So it literally translates as tattered or rag or shabby, which says it all really. So it's an old piece of fabric that's been worn. You might all have also have heard the term boromono, so that means tattered thing or rag thing. So it's a textile that's seen better days, let's put it like that. And they were pieces of clothing or household textiles that through necessity have been repaired and mended using other pieces of Boro. So they would have made patches, and they would have used stitches to cover up the holes and to sew the patches together, and they would have reused these materials and these fabrics again and again. So that is a piece of Boro or boromono. So they were made by people in rural Japan in the sort of 18th and 19th centuries. Cotton in northern Japan is quite hard to grow because of the climate, so it would have been something that they couldn't have got hold of very easily. They would have probably traded for maybe second-hand pieces and used those pieces for their clothing and for their household items, and they would have repaired them with other pieces of Boro, and they were often indigo in colour. You can see it's wonderful. Everything's indigo, everything's blue today. And they would use indigo because poorer people, working class people, were allowed to use that dye. Other dyes were reserved for more upper class people. But it was a good dye to use actually, because you can use the dye bath lots of times. You can keep dipping, and the more you dip the darker it gets. So you can get lots of dips out of one dye bath, unlike some other kinds of dyes. And indigo actually makes a physical contact with the fibres rather than a chemical one, so you're actually adding to the fibres, and it makes the fibres stronger. And a lot of these people were farm workers or they were labourers, and they were doing manual tasks, and they needed hard wearing clothing, so the indigo would actually make the cotton more hard wearing. So it was a great colour to use from that point of view, but it is also very beautiful. So most pieces you will find will be indigo in colour. So while I'm going to talk about Boro, I think I should mention sashiko at this point, because if you Google it, Boro and sashiko, these two things come up together, and a lot of people don't know the difference. I've only got this piece, which is a cushion I made from a kit, but on indigo with white sashiko thread. So sashiko is the stitching, is the white stitching, and you can stitch it to make patterns. And you can use that to sew over the repair, so you can cover the holes with it, and you can join your fabrics with it. So sashiko is the stitching, is the white stitching, and Boro is the tattered rags, that is the pieces of textile. So they are two distinct things. You will often find sashiko on Boro, but that's what the difference between the two is. So I can't show you this piece in whole, so what I've done is taken a picture of it because it's huge. It's the size of a duvet cover, so I'll put that up now for you and you can see what it's like. Absolutely beautiful, made of lots of different types of fabrics, which I'll talk about in a second, but you can see some edges are tattered. So what I thought I'll do is we'll just zoom in a little bit and I'll show you the Boro bit, so the mended parts of it, and then we can talk about what I want to do with it. So mark the first one because it's a bit hard to remember where it is. So this is a mend here. Hopefully you can see that. Now they've used the same fabric. This is one bit I don't want him to walk on, because it's not really a cat bed, this one. So this is the mend here. So it's done in the same fabric. So it would be kind of done to hide it. They didn't really want to make a thing of the repair. We kind of have a bit of a thing now about visible mending, and you can see the mend, and it's part of the aesthetic, if you like, but they tried to hide it. They weren't proud to be mending these pieces, so they would try to hide it, and they would put the patch behind. If I just show you the back, find the back, because you can see where it is a bit more clearly on the back. So there is the patch on the back. So they'd get a piece of fabric that's the same. They didn't try and match up the pattern like you might do in dressmaking, but they just used the same fabric so it was invisible, and you can see the stitching here. So just stitched around the patch to cover up the hole and repair that hole. And they've actually lost it. They've actually folded the edges of the hole in, so you haven't got the raw edge, you haven't got the broken fibres. That's folded under, and the piece is patched on the back, and then it's sewn around here. And when you hold this up, it's actually quite hard to see. It's much easier to see on the back, so it was a pretty good job. There's another one here. It's huge, this thing. There it is. So again, the same fabric, and it's sort of on the edge, so the edges would be worn a lot, and depending on where in the garment or the household thing they'll be using is, it depends on where it gets worn. So there's another one. It's the same sort of shape, interestingly, but there's the stitching around there, and the same fabric underneath. And then I'm just going to show you the edge, because this is what it looks like at its worst. So there's a you can see mighty big holes here, so a lot of patching required. So they would just fold that under. This is an applique technique, reverse applique, and if you check out my applique video on my embroidery channel, you can see how to do that, but that's basically what this is. So turn that under so you've got a nice smooth edge, patch goes on the back, stitch around it in a colour that's similar so it doesn't show up unless you want to do the sashiko patterns where you make the pattern and the pattern is the design, and then hide those repairs. Now obviously this has got tons of holes in it here, and this edge is just completely disintegrated, which I thought was why I really wanted it, because I think this bit is really interesting. Some such delicate little bits on this here, and holes in it and rips and tears. You think, what's happened to this piece that it's in this state? And this is all around the bottom, so I guess it's been hung off something, and because there's the edge, look, which is nice and strong with the stitching along it, but then it's got these huge holes in it throughout. And there's these patched with different pieces of fabric, which we'll talk about the fabric in a second, and it's just got holes all over it, really, all around the edge. Very delicate state that this is in. So that's what Boro is, and what the repairs and what the fabric looks like before and after it's been mended. So let's have a little look at the fabrics that are in it, because they're really gorgeous, and in this one too. We'll have a look at this because it's got some different ones in it. So these are often found in pieces of Boro, and this is one called Kasuri, and it's a paste, so a rice flour paste, and they would have put it on with a stencil. So you put your stencil of your design on your fabric, and you put the paste over the top, and you let the paste dry, and then you dye your fabric, and it doesn't take it up where the paste is. So you're sort of doing a reverse kind of dyeing process, and that's how these amazing patterns are made. And there's a slightly different one here, and you can see it, and you can do different stages, and you can make different resists, so you can dye it in one colour and you can dye it in another colour. And we saw this a lot in India when I travelled to India, these layers of dyeing and of printing and of the stencils to make these patterns that are absolutely beautiful. So it's got a couple of examples on it there, and you can see also on this where it's sort of faded, where the colour is faded. Indigo is a very strong colour, but it's sort of, let's find a good bit. So you can see how dark it is there. Let's show that bit compared to that bit. So how dark it is here and how it's faded here. So the colour's faded a little bit. I don't know how old this is. This was advertised as vintage, which usually isn't that old, but it could have been, this was vintage, but the fabric could be a lot older than that. So I don't actually know how old this piece is. But so we've got it fading, we've got it wearing as well. So there's two things going on there, so we have to be careful. It's not just about mending holes, but what condition is the rest of the fabric in as well, and would I need to stabilise it if I was going to use it. So that's the Kasuri technique, which is interesting. So I'm just going to pull the other one in that I've got and show you a little bit of that one, because that's got some different techniques on it. So this is the other piece of Boro that I have. This one is slightly different. This is more padded. That one is just a single layer of fabric, so I'm not too sure what that would have been. Maybe it was going to be a bed cover or a futon cover, because they're often a lot thicker, which this one is. This has got several layers to it. And I'll just put this under this camera here. I'll just hold it up actually. This is about a third of it. So I'll put a picture of that up now actually, so you can see that as well. So probably a futon cover. I think it was sold as a floor mat. So you can see how the household textiles are coming, and things that you can put on the floor, things you can cover up, things that would keep you warm, because it does get cold there. And it's got this amazing hole in it, which makes me think what's happened to this piece. And now I'll put it under this camera for a closer look. So we'll talk about the hole in a second, but here is some more of that paste resist dyed fabric, that Katazomi. See this beautiful pattern on it, and this one is quite worn. This one is more worn than the other one. So if I just bring the corner in there, you can see how dark that is compared to that one. So this is quite heavily worn, even though it's not got holes in it yet. That's going to be the next stage after it. So it's sort of interesting to learn to read these fabrics and just look at them. I've spent a lot of time looking at this one, trying to work out what its history is and what its story is. So that's a bit of that fabric, but I wanted to show you these fabrics because these are woven ones. You'll often see these in pieces of Boro as well. Now they've got names, but I'm going to have to check those because I can't remember. So the striped patterns are called shima. And these are woven, so there'll be different colours of thread. And if you dye indigo, you can keep putting it in the vat and it will get darker and darker. So if you want a paler indigo, you don't put it in the vat so much. And if you want a darker one, you keep dipping it. So that's probably how they got these different colours of indigo. And then there's this checked pattern here, which is called a koshi. So this check pattern, lots of browns in this one and some more earthy tones. So this is when you'll see a diversion from the indigo. You see a lot of these in this textile. And then there is another one, if I just find on the back. So there's a bit more of that one now. There it is. You can see it. We'll look at the back as well. So there's another checked one as well. The same sorts of colours but a different pattern. So there's a few different fabrics going on this one, and you can see the layers of it here. So if I show you the corner, it's all been finished off properly. They're all very beautifully made, but then they've got these mad crazy patches in the middle. So I think the whole thing must have been this pattern here, and then they've patched it, but we'll zoom into this middle bit because this is really interesting, I think, and have a look at these layers. So this hole actually goes all the way through here. So whatever this has been used for, which makes me think it has been on the floor and used as a mat actually, and maybe it had a chair on it, something's kind of ripped it and it's gone through all these layers, and these layers are all repairs. And if I just peel them back carefully because they're delicate. So there's the checked one on the back there, you can see that checked one. So that's the back layer which has been patched on the back. Remember I said they'd put the patches on the back so you can see it. Then we've got this paler one here, which is this one that's in the corner. And then we have got this layer of Katazomi dye resist on it, and then we've got this striped one on top. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 different layers going on in that. So they would repair from both sides. You've got a hole, you put one that side, you can put one that side, and they've not worried about matching this one. They just took a great big piece of stripy material over the top of it. So it was just about reusing them, using the materials that you had, which is what I'm quite interested in. You don't try and match this up. They just went over the top, and then that got ripped, and they went over the top again, and that got ripped. So whatever they were doing with this, it all happened in this area. I don't know why they didn't turn it around or use it for something else. It's interesting how it's just got that massive tear in it. But there's a couple of other places where there are repairs. So I should just pull those in. So you can see the stitching of this one, but you can't see the fabric. Now the stitching is not very pretty. So if we turn it over on the back, we can't see it either. So this one is hidden inside these layers of fabric. So here you can see the patch on your back. Even the patch has got a little patch. So the patch has been patched buy another piece underneath. So there's so many layers to it, it's just amazing. And then this has been turned in like that one that we looked at first. And the edge is turned in to make a neat edge, and just tiny little stab stitches just to hold that down and just to patch that hole up there. So it's got patch upon patch, so I don't know what those big stitches are on the other side because I can't see. So there's something going on inside these layers that you can only tell by the stitching, and it's got these stitched bits all over it. It's holding the edges of the patches in. So it's just got this fascinating story to it and all these beautiful fabrics, and I kind of thought, oh well, I'll stitch over the whole, but I like the story that it tells, because it's also got this little bit here which my sister Caroline looked at, and she likes dressmaking, and she sort of saw this. Let me just zoom out a second, and said that this looks like some sort of collar that's gone round the neck. So is it part of a kimono? This bit looks like the same pattern as this little butterfly appears here. It's not got the two colours in it, it's only the one, but it's the same pattern. But look at how blue this one is compared to this. So I'm thinking this one's a lot newer, and this is an interesting shape. It's like a collar shape. So how has that ended up that shape in there? Have they used a piece of kimono to do that? And I have, talking of kimonos, I've got one over here, and we'll just have a look at that one because the fabric is interesting. In these pieces, it's all made of widths of fabric about that wide. So that stripy one is that wide, this one is the same width. So the pieces of fabric are all the same width, and this is the width that they use to make kimonos with. So let's just pull that one down and have a look at that one as well. So you can see the width of the fabric here. So there is one width of fabric, that's the middle of the kimono, and then there's another width of fabric to the side. So they put two pieces together and they made the back. They're absolutely ingenious kimono construction. It's brilliant because they're all made of just these straight pieces of fabric. You just wove this piece of fabric and you could use it to construct these garments with. You put the two together and you make the back of the kimono. There's another one down the front. The sleeves have another one here. You can see there again that shape, it's been folded and shaped here, but it's that width of fabric. And what they would do with it is they could replace the parts of the kimono and their work jackets and the clothing they wore with another strip. So you could move strips around and use a bit that wasn't so worn, or you could just replace the whole strip without having to take the garment apart. So they're quite amazing construction, I think, these. And I also just want to show you this pattern, because this is another technique that you will find in Boro pieces. They're not in my two, but you will see these, and this is called Kasuri, and this is a weaving technique. So I first came across this in India, where it's known as ikat weaving, and what you actually do with this is you dye your threads first. So you space dye your threads first. So you'll wrap some thread around the thread so that it doesn't take the dye, and then you'll leave a little bit and it takes the dye, and then you'll have another white bit, and the thread is dyed so that when you weave the thread you get a pattern, and it's absolute magic how they do it. And I think they put it on a warping frame and they work out the pattern and they paint the dye on, or they tie the threads up on the warping frame, and then they have to wind that onto reels, and then when they weave it, it should come out in this pattern. So you can see this repeat pattern, and you can see that they're not all exactly the same. You can see that it's a repeat pattern, but when you look closely, this one is different to this one. You can see the tops are slightly different. So just a little bit of movement of the thread when they're weaving will just change the design slightly. I think it's absolutely incredible technique, and I can show you a little bit more of it in this bit of fabric that I bought here. So you can see again this repeat pattern, and it stops sort of in a dead straight line. So they weave just with the blue, and then they bring this space dyed thread in, and they do a little bit of this Kasuri pattern, this ikat weaving in it, and they get these patterns in it. So this is a woven piece, so that's another one I've got. And then I just bring this one in because this is quite funny. So this is a cotton print for quilting, a modern quilting fabric with that pattern in mind. It's not woven, it's printed, because it's a lot easier to print it. But I just thought that was quite fun when I saw that, and I was, oh look, there's a little bit of the ikat Kasuri weaving in there. So that was a printed one. That's an actual one, just so you know what the difference if you come across those. So you might see that fabric in there. But I just wanted to show you that because that is something that comes up, and you might see that, and I just thought the technique is incredible and worth a little look into. So I'm going to hang the kimono back up, and then I'm going to tell you what my plans were for these pieces, and then you can help me decide if I should stick to that or if I should do something else with them. So I think this one, I think the floor stroke bed cover, it's going to stay as it is. That's hung up in my studio and I quite like looking at that one. I was going to repair it. I was going to try doing a little bit of Boro repair on it, but I quite like it as it is. I quite like the story that it tells. But this one I bought specifically to take it apart. Now it's made, I can show you a little bit of it, of different panels of fabric. So I've got that one across the top. There's a different one in the middle. And then we've got another one in the corner. There we go. Different one in the corner. And it's made of these kimono width strips of fabric. So we have to, if I take it apart, if I undo these stitches, I get these long panels of fabric. I get these really interesting Boro repairs. And I get this very fragile bit of fabric I could do something with, and I bought it with the idea of doing a class in it. I thought how wonderful it would do to make a little project with some actual original Japanese Boro, and use the Boro to repair and to mend and to make it into something new and beautiful. I thought that would be a wonderful class. We can have a piece of this actual textile. I'm never going to use all of this in my lifetime. I thought it would be nice to share it with you. No, it's not. Okay, you can sit on that one. Bed cover, floor cover, cat bed. Recycling into something else. Don't stick your claws in it, matey. So I thought it'd be wonderful to share this with you and do a class. We've been doing classes in Sherwood Pines. I've done my forest sampler class, which was really wonderful. I thought I'd really like to do another one, and this would be a wonderful one to do. So it involves cutting it into the pieces and giving people a piece and making a little project out of it. However, when I got it, I thought, oh, it's a beautiful piece, and I just hung it up in the studio. It's huge, it's like 2 meters square, and I thought, oh, that would look lovely on a bed. And I actually tried it on the bed. I threw it out on the bed and I thought, yeah, it still looks lovely on the bed. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I thought, what an amazing project it would be to repair this one and recycle and mend this one, inspired by Boro textiles, and make a bed covering. What an interesting video that might make, from an actual piece to repairing it and making a finished one. So now I don't know what to do with it. I don't know whether to cut it into small pieces, not cut it, take it apart and into small pieces and use it in a class with you, or do a project in a video where I repair the whole thing, which is quite a bit of work because these corners are not in a good place. That's one of the better ones. So it is quite a lot of work to do that, and there are lots of holes in it as well, and lots of places where the fabric is faded, so it'd be fragile, so it would take a lot of work to sort that out. But that could be really interesting. That could be a really interesting project. That's what they did with them. You know, they didn't when they got so bad, by the way, they did cut them up and make them into smaller pieces of textiles and make cleaning cloths with them and things like that. So they would have probably done that at this point, but if I had a backing for it, there's a wonderful repair there. Look at that one. Big L shape repair. That's a really weird shape. I've just seen that one. And it's got this amazing, look at this fabric on the back. Just found another one. So the back is just as interesting. So that's my dilemma. That's why I'm making this video. I've got a record of it. I looked at it really closely. Even enjoyed just touching it. So maybe you can help me out. I will continue to think about it and see what I want to do with it. But you're welcome to leave comments below and tell me what you think I should do with it, or another idea that I haven't thought about. I can't just hang it up because it'll fall apart. So I think I need to do something with it. So do let me know your ideas. I'm really interested to see what you think I should do with it, and then keep watching in the future to see what I actually do with it. So I hope you enjoyed that little look into my Boro pieces, a bit more than Ginger Cat did, who's just fallen asleep on one. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what you think I should do with it. And do check out the other videos on my channel as well. I've got a video all about resist dyeing that I did a little bit accidentally. You can check that one out up here. This is my bag that I made out of oak leaves and and acorns from Sherwood Forest. So do go and check that video out, and I will see you in another video.